Chef Sarah here with the Sylvia Center. We're a nonprofit specializing in providing food and nutrition education in New York City and Columbia County. If you've not checked out our YouTube channel yet, please do, and that way you can get more videos like this one. Okay, so we are on week 2 of our Noodle Passport series. So this week takes us to Italy, where I'm going to show you how to make potato gnocchi and ratatouille. It's really simple, but you could also change this if you want to use sweet potatoes instead of regular potatoes. You could actually use squash also. It's really, really yummy to make this with squash. So I'm going to wash my hands and I will be right back and we'll make our gnocchi. Okay, so I'm back. These potatoes I actually cooked earlier. So these are cooked and cooled down. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my towel here and I'm just going to peel these. This peel should come off really, really nice and easily. And yep, you can see it's all just coming right off of there. So I'm making a small batch of this today, but this is something you could easily make for a large crowd as well. Okay, and I'm going to peel our second potato here. Ooh, that one peeled really easily. Okay, so put that towel to the side. And then with the potato, I'm just going to mash this. If you had a ricer, it works really, really well, and that would put this into really small pieces. I don't currently have one of those, so I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to use a fork, but it would make it even nicer and smoother with the ricer. Okay. So you want these into pretty small pieces. You're trying to kind of mash this potato as much as possible. Put that out of the way. And that fork is just really smashing the back of that. If you've ever been in class with me before, this is kind of the same way that we've made guacamole, the way we've smashed avocado. Okay. And the smoother this is, the nicer of a dough it's going to make. So I'm just going through and finding any of those large chunks. Just smashing, smashing, smashing. Okay. So you can see, those are all mashed up. Okay, and at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add the potato to my flour. Okay, and I'm also going to add in my egg. I'm going to just mix that egg up a little bit. And with this, I like to make kind of a little well in the center. So if you see, I'm just kind of moving everything to the outside, and I'm going to put that egg right there in the center. Okay. I'm going to also use a little bit of salt. We always want to make sure we season it all the way through so it tastes really great. Where if we just season the outside or season the water we were cooking it in, it would not get all that flavor. Okay, once I have all my ingredients in the bowl, I'm going to use my hands and mix everything together. I like to get my hands dirty when I cook. I know some people don't, so you could definitely use that fork or that spatula, but I prefer getting my hands in there. I'm going to mix this until it's a nice, smooth dough. If it still feels too sticky, that's where you could add a little bit more flour. Okay. So I did add a little bit more flour, and as you can see, I also added a little bit of flour to my work surface where I'm going to knead this dough. Okay, so once that's come together, I'm going to put my bowl to the side, and I'm going to use my surface here, and I'm just going to knead that a couple times. So what I'm doing is I'm just folding that dough over itself. And what that's doing is it's kind of creating some gluten in there, so this gnocchi will be a really great texture. And it's also helping us to get a really, really smooth dough. Okay, so now that our dough is ready, I'm going to take just a little piece of this and I'm going to roll it into kind of like a snake almost. I kind of think of it as, you know, when you were a kid and played with Play-Doh. It's very, very similar, but it tastes a lot better. Okay, so I'm going to roll that out. Okay, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to add just a touch more flour. If it starts to get too sticky at any point, you can just add more flour. Okay, so you can see I'm just rolling this. Okay, so once we have our dough like this, I like to go through and cut these into smaller portions. So I'm just cutting these into about 1-inch size pieces. You can make them smaller or larger depending on your preference. Okay, so you can see all of our little gnocchi here ready to go. And you have two options at this point. You can leave them just as they are. You could boil these and they would be fantastic. Or if you wanted kind of that more traditional look, you can just roll them on to a fork. And that's just going to create little lines in them. So I'm going to do a few both ways. Okay, but it's really up to you, whatever your preference is. Okay, so I'm going to get started on the ratatouille. I really love making ratatouille for a couple different reasons. One of the best reasons is because you can use up a lot of ingredients that you might have in the fridge. Like I had half an onion and half a red pepper, so I was able to use the other half of those, which is really great. And you could also really improvise, where if you had squash you wanted to add in, or if you had fresh tomatoes instead of canned, it's really up to you, and you could add so many different ingredients to make this ratatouille. I'm making a really simple ratatouille today, and my main ingredient is eggplant. So this eggplant, I actually added a little bit of salt to about 10 minutes ago. That way, if you can see in the bottom, it's starting to bring out some of the juices and some of the water in the eggplant. So eggplant holds in a lot of water, and so when we cook it, all that water is going to try to escape. So if we get some of that water out now, it's just going to help this to be a much more flavorful dish. So I have our eggplant. I also have zucchini, red pepper, onions, garlic, and in here I have oregano, thyme, and basil. So those herbs, as always, are going to add so much flavor. Everyone knows that I love herbs a lot, and I think it can add so much depth and brightness to all of our dishes. So anytime you cook with fresh herbs, go for it. I also have a can of tomatoes. Like I said earlier, you could use whole tomatoes, you could use crushed tomatoes, you could use really any kind of tomatoes you can find would work great for this. Today I'm using crushed tomatoes, but you could buy the whole ones or you could buy fresh, whatever you prefer. Okay, so we have all of our ingredients here ready to go. And as always, we have salt and pepper, and I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil also. So let's go ahead and go to the stovetop and make our ratatouille. So in a saute pan over medium heat, I added a little bit of olive oil, and then I started to saute my onions. I did leave these onions kind of big, so they're nice and chunky, just like all the other vegetables we're using. Once the onions get a little bit caramelized, I added the garlic. I love garlic, so I added a lot, but you can add as much as you would like. At this point, we add in our eggplant that was soaking with a little bit of salt to get all those extra liquids out. And this will saute for about 8 minutes total. This is where I added the zucchini and the red peppers. And you could add any other vegetables you were using now too, like mushrooms or whatever else it might be. This will also saute for probably about 4 to 6 minutes until those vegetables start to soften up. Once they start to soften up, this is when I like to add in the tomatoes. So here in a minute you'll see I'm going to add in my crushed tomatoes, but you could also use whatever tomato product you were using. If you were using fresh tomatoes, they would need to cook a little bit longer just to release all those liquids. At this point is when I add any seasoning, so I added my salt and pepper and all my herbs. Okay, so everything's good to go. My gnocchi is done here. I just made a little bit to start because I'm just going to eat this tonight myself. If I was feeding a lot of other people, I would have made that whole batch or even more. With this, I boiled this in salted water, and when the gnocchi came up to the top, that's when they're done. So they tell you when they're ready to go, which is really great. It makes it really easy. And then our ratatouille here, as you can tell, I cut everything up into really big pieces because I do like my ratatouille to be really chunky. I want to taste the eggplant and the tomatoes and the peppers and the zucchini. I want to really taste all those vegetables. If you want to cut those smaller, you definitely could. It's a preference, but I did leave mine very chunky. As you can see, I made a lot of ratatouille. So my plan is to put a little bit on top of here today, and then I'll save the rest for a meal for later on in the week. So I'm going to go ahead and add a nice big spoonful on to my gnocchi here. Okay, so you can see how beautiful that looks. It smells fantastic. You could also top this with a little bit of cheese or more herbs. Would make it even more amazing. Or even just like a quick little drizzle of olive oil or balsamic vinaigrette. Once again, this is a meal that you can make it any way you wanted. You could change that gnocchi up with sweet potato or squash instead of potato. And you could also add whatever veggies to that ratatouille that you like. That's one of my favorite things about all these noodle dishes that we're talking about over the next couple weeks is every single one you can adapt to the foods and the flavors that you like. Okay, so I'm going to go eat this. It smells good. It is nice and hot. Thank you so much for joining me today. Check out next week when we have week 3 of our noodle passport. Have a wonderful day and keep cooking, everyone. Bye.